All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, October 1st, whole new month. Hooray. We're just going to do a little check-in on tasks for Backdrop. Starting with announcements, the first most exciting announcement is that we have placed the order for our Dragon t-shirts. If you want to see a preview of what those look like, there is an image posted in the agenda. There's also a little teeny tiny image posted on the backdropcms.org contribute page, and if you click on the image, it'll blow up to be a bigger one. So if you want to see what the t-shirts will look like, they're on there. We used our normal dragon from the sticker and put him on the front of a white t-shirt. We did make the word backdrop a little bit smaller, so the emphasis is on the dragon and not on the word backdrop. We chose a very comfortable fabric of t-shirt, the same kind of fabric that we had on the previous t-shirt, if you had that one. But we did it in a heather white because we like the white background because you could print the dragon on it really easily, but we didn't like a plain white t-shirt, so we chose kind of a really pretty dappled heathered color for white, which I think is going to look fantastic. We are also ordering hoodies. We don't have designs ready for you to see those yet. But we did choose like this heathered gray color that's the traditional Bad Camp hoodie from 2013. Same comfortable, eco-friendly fabric, and hopefully it'll be the same eco-black color as well. But it'll say Backdrop on the front, and it'll have the dragon on the back. And we have a new dragon for that, and he's adorable. And we'll get images of that posted online soon, probably today or tomorrow. So if you want to pre-order a t-shirt or a hoodie, you can do that on our website. We're accepting $25 donations for t-shirts and $50 donations for hoodies. And if you can come to Bad Camp, you can pick it up in person. If you can't come to Bad Camp, then we can mail you t-shirts and hoodies. So anyone who's watching this video and really wants a Bad Camp t-shirt or hoodie, or Backdrop t-shirt and hoodie, and can't come to Bad Camp, can still have one. We're making a fairly large order. We think we're going to be buying more than we need for Bad Camp, and we'll be able to continue to send them out over time. So if you miss Bad Camp or you don't find out about this until later and you see somebody wearing a hoodie and you need one, order one. We can also reorder if we don't get enough. So we have a process in place for dealing with people who want their swag. So that's the biggest exciting news I think we have this week. Same news as the previous weeks as well. We want speakers for the Backdrop Summit at Bad Camp. We have nominated Wes to do a talk on theming in Backdrop. We need somebody who's going to be there to do a talk on module development. If you're interested in that, let us know. Or porting modules from Drupal 7 if you'd prefer to do that. We would like to do a show and tell in differences between Backdrop and Drupal 7, so anyone who's interested in doing that can do that as well. We also want to have a I don't know, anyone who has anything particularly interesting they want to talk about in Backdrop and wants to spend 20 minutes on stage. It can be demoing a live website, it can be demoing an in-development website, it can be just talking about what it's like to be part of the Backdrop community. Anything you think might be interesting to anyone who's at the summit, we would love to get a bunch of people on stage. So if you're going to be there, or if you're thinking about coming and you're not sure and giving a talk would help you decide to come, that would be good too. If we don't find enough other speakers to do all these talks, Nate and I can kind of fill in the gaps, but it would be great if we could get people who weren't Nate and I to do the talks as well, since Nate and I talk a lot and we're getting kind of tired of talking. So anyone else who wants to do it, that would be fantastic. Jeff also has a session he did recently on Hello World module comparisons between Drupal 8 and Backdrop. If anyone wants to give that, his slides are available. And if anyone else has slides that they have worked on for previous Backdrop sessions that they'd also like to contribute for other people to present, that would also be fantastic. So anyone who has any interest in participating, either presenting or donating slides or anything else, let us know. That's coming up. We've got like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 3 weeks to the day until the Backdrop Summit. A little farther in the future, we also need speakers for Drupal Camp Utah. The organizers of that camp have reached out to us trying to get somebody to come to speak specifically on Backdrop. That would be good if anyone wants to do that. And then same thing as last time, we have free PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop contributed developers. So if you're working on Backdrop and you want a PHP Storm license, send an email to info@backdropcms.org and we can set you up. All right, we don't have any super critical updates from the Project Management Committee this week. So I want to turn it over to Nate to talk about community growth.
Okay. So let's see. In terms of modules, we have 159 total projects available for Backdrop CMS. There are 2 new projects that have been created since last week. You can get the full list of Backdrop contributed projects, including modules, themes, and layouts at github.com/backdrop-contrib. Um, so there's 159 total projects, but in order for them to show up on backdropcms.org, they have to have an official release created on GitHub, which involves making a tag and then publishing that tag so that it actually has some release notes associated with it. And there are 85 total projects with official releases on backdropcms.org. 4 new projects have made official releases since last week, which is fantastic. So I like that we're closing the gap there between projects that are on GitHub and projects that have official releases. Although I kind of really doubt that they'll ever be equal. There'll always be kind of more projects that are in development than have official releases. But still great that a lot of our contributors are making releases and getting those published out on backdropcms.org. We have 39 total people that have access to the Contrib group. If you are interested in being a Contrib author, which basically can be creating a new module for Backdrop or porting an existing module to Backdrop from Drupal, or a theme, or doing layouts if you're into that sort of thing as well, you can apply to join the Backdrop Contrib group at github.com/backdrop-ops/contrib. And then, of course, these links are in the release notes, or I'm sorry, in the agenda, which we have every week. So let's see. That's it for community growth. I usually roll right into infrastructure tasks. There's been some slow and steady progress in these areas as well this week. Let's see, update checking. We're still not accruing the correct data for how many sites are running which modules. We're collecting it correctly, but then our number crunching script is not crunching the numbers correctly, and so it's zeroing everything out. So that could use some work because it would be great if we could then make it so that our listings of modules, themes, and layouts on backdropcms.org were sorted by usage because we're keeping track of or we're receiving information about which sites are running which modules, but we're not actually crunching the numbers correctly to make it so we can actually sort on that. Let's see. And then once we get those numbers crunching correctly, we'll add some charts. And we also want to make it so that people can actually see that information so people can tell which modules are the most popular and how many sites are out there and all of that stuff. Let's see. Project Browser. We're hoping that in the next release, it is entirely possible that we would implement Project Browser into core. Project Browser would allow you to find modules on .org without leaving your own website. A lot of people never use the ability of Drupal 7 to install a module because it's so janky that you need to copy and paste a URL to a zip file. But that functionality already exists in Drupal 7 and already exists in Backdrop. And if we just give users a way to actually find those modules and then tie that all up so they don't need to copy and paste the URL, then we would give people the ability to install modules from within the UI, which would be a huge win for usability, and it would also really increase the liveliness of the Contrib world, we think. So that's coming along. It's issue 870. We already have the actual implementation for that on backdropcms.org, so it's serving up JSON files that Backdrop sites can consume, and you can install the Project Browser module that is currently a Contrib module to try it out. So that's working and actually pretty adequate, but there's some areas that it needs some improvement on. Let's see, Drush for Backdrop is issue number 47 in the Backdrop queue. This has been kind of a long-running thing that we've really, it'd really be great to get this working because Drush is so central to many developers' workflows in the land of Drupal, and we've kind of been going along without it for almost a year now, but it's entirely possible to make Drush work on Backdrop, but we're running into a couple of snags. Jen, do you know what the latest is on
Yeah.
Drush?
So we got a new contributor in that queue. Uber Hacker has been working on it, which has been fantastic. He's also got it working by tricking Backdrop into thinking it was Drupal 7 by adding the constant version. In Backdrop, we changed the constant version from version to Backdrop version so that we wouldn't get it confused with Drupal 7. And then we had that defined in the Drupal compatibility layer. The only problem is that Drush uses this random string to figure out what version of Drupal it is to build things like which SQL driver to use. And we need to use Drupal 6's SQL driver, even though everything else is supposed to be Drupal 7. So I haven't actually been able to get Drush working, even though Uber Hacker has. And my guess is that he might be using a Drupal 7 database connection syntax in his settings.php, which would make it work, instead of using a Backdrop style or Drupal 6 style one, which would make it not work. But there's a couple of other little snags, like now that we've got it actually firing, we need to go figure out which parts of Drush may need to be adapted in order to make it work better for Backdrop. Like, we have the ability to alter all of the command files that run, but we may need to do some additional things, like the location of our settings.php file is different in Backdrop than it was in Drupal. There's just a bunch of stuff, like we're going to be pulling modules from backdropcms.org instead of drupal.org. We just need to find like where we can tap into all those little commands to make sure that they all run smoothly on both platforms. And some of those are easy to do, and some of them are hard because they're calling like built-in Drush internal functions that were meant only for Drupal and do things the way Drupal does it. And if we need to change something there, that needs to be abstracted first into a way that we can change it before we can actually get those changes in. So I think we're pretty close in that it's almost working, in that, you know, if you change the way Backdrop works to make it work like Drupal, it'll work. That at least points to the places where, you know, we need to make some changes in order to get it to work the way Backdrop should work. So we're definitely narrowing in on the problems, which means that we can come up with solutions. So it looks pretty good. I'm feeling good about it. Should I take over?
Yeah,
So Backdrop, next on the list. Drush for Backdrop is really important. We also want to make backdropcms.org a little bit more feature-rich in the near future. We just got modules, themes, and layouts automatically pulling in from GitHub, which was our #1 priority. Next up, we want to allow people the ability to sign into that website. So that means setting up some new roles, making sure the permissions are correct for the average user, and then making sure those people, if they wanted to, could sign in using their GitHub account. So people who already are GitHub users won't need to create a Backdrop account too, but people who aren't GitHub users should still be able to create a Backdrop account for the people who aren't developers and aren't using those kind of tools in our community. So if we want to get designers and content editors and business people and all these people who don't actually touch code involved in our community, we need to give them something to join as well. So we'll get that set up. And then we also want to be able to set up a showcase so people who build sites in Backdrop can show them off. We want to be able to set up a service provider listing. So if you're looking for a developer or web host that will take care of your Backdrop site, we can match those. We want to put up an event calendar, so anyone who wants to go to a Drupal event where they can talk about Backdrop or a Backdrop-specific event will be able to find those on our website and post them. And then we also want to be able to put up things like the jobs listing that's worked so well on Drupal.org. We'd like to do the same thing on Backdrop. Next up is the progress of Backdrop CMS itself. We've got a next release 1.2.3, which will be a bug fix release, and it looks like we have a milestone set up for that, but there's nothing in it. So I think that means everything in that milestone's been fixed. No?
it just means that we don't have any bugs that
Okay, yeah.
that are scheduled for 1.3 or 1.2.3 yet.
Okay.
So since we released 1.2.2 a week ago, we haven't had any new bugs.
Well, not any bugs that were important enough to get scheduled for the next release.
Yeah, we don't really even schedule bugs for the next release. It's just whenever they get fixed, then they get added to the milestone. So the milestone actually is almost always empty for a bug fix release, and it only gets stuff put into it as things are fixed.
Okay, nice. So nothing yet, but if you guys find bugs that are important, file them and we'll get them fixed. The next the next minor release is 1.3.0. It's scheduled for January 15th, 2016. And this is going to be a user experience release. So we're going to try and go through the things that are most troublesome in terms of people interacting with the software, either for the first time or as an entering Drupal user, and try and solve some of those issues to create a better product for the end user. So we've got a bunch of stuff that we kind of put in really quickly to make sure we get the features in that we have follow-up issues on, things like the rich text editor, things like the new layout system, and it would be good to just kind of take this release to go back and fix or add features or flush out some of the things that we'd like to do with those big new toys that we have in core. There's also a bunch of leftover user interface stuff from being imperfect in Drupal 7, having fixes go into Drupal 8 that we really liked that we would like to also get in Backdrop. And so we've created a fairly large set of issues in the 1.3.0 milestone. I'm not sure all of those will end up staying in that milestone. I think what will happen with this is we'll try and fix as many as we can, and when it comes to January 1st, we'll kind of reprioritize, or we might do it several times between now and then to try and say, this would be nice to have, but nobody's working on it, and it's not super important to get done for 1.3, and we can remove the milestone or move it to a future one. But because most of these issues are not too terribly complicated, I think we can get a whole ton of them done. So that's kind of where we're at with those. We also have some major ones like cleaning up field UI, which might be big enough that we aren't really sure that'll get in yet. I'm not sure we have a clear plan for it. We've got a lot of really good ideas. We've got a lot of good people thinking about it. But first we need to figure out how to solve the problem. Then we need to technically write the code to solve the problem. And I really hope we can get some improvements in 1.3. But it's going to be a hard problem to solve. So we also have a roadmap posted at backdropcms.org/roadmap that contains the major features working on for 1.3. And then anything we need to, any new features we need to add for 1.4, we can add there as well. At this point, I'm not sure we really know what we want in 1.4. It would be great to look at what emerges in Contrib for Backdrop on real websites and say, what is the feature that is most needed by most people running Backdrop right now? But it's hard to make that guess today because we don't have that many people running Backdrop sites, and I'm not sure the numbers are going to be super fair in terms of representations of the Backdrop community. So I think looking at what has been most needed in Drupal 7 is still really relevant for us. So if anyone is working on Drupal 7 sites and there's a feature that you feel like is important enough to be in core, open an issue for Backdrop, and we can at the very least talk about it and figure out, is it something we need to schedule, or is it something we should just have on our wish list, and we can figure out if that needs to be added. So future, I think, looks really great for 1.3. It's going to be a much better product after that, and 1.4 is still undetermined. So things we're always trying to work on, in spite of the fact that 1.3 is a user experience release. User experience issues in general, we can get in all the time. So if there's something that gets done really soon, we could put that into 1.2.3 or 1.2.4. So depending on the scope of the user experience change, those are continually reviewed and merged. Something like field UI rewrite might be big enough that it's got to wait till 1.3. But little tiny things like terminology changes or other things we could probably get in sooner than that. Developer experience issues are also really important to us. One of the things that is an issue with getting new Drupal developers on board is that Drupal is really confusing and hard for new people to learn. We'd like to try and improve that situation as much as we can in Backdrop. Again, we can't do too much because we're trying to keep it so similar to Drupal 7, but there are things that as you work on a daily basis, you're going to run into and say, oh, that's kind of weird. And even though we've been dealing with these things in Drupal for a long time, it's good to note them, create an issue and say, I think this thing is a little bit weird. Let's see if we can figure out a way to make it seem less weird to new developers or more intuitive, just to try and help decrease that learning curve a little bit. These are things that you might not even think about as a Drupal developer because you're used to working in the weirdness, but if you can kind of put on your non-experienced hat, and when you go to do something, think about, like, is this intuitive? Would I have guessed to do this? or just to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Does it make sense? It would be really great to just kind of have that introspection when you're working through code to try and see if we can catch some things and make the experience of developing on Backdrop more intuitive for everyone. Every Thursday we have sprints after this weekly meeting. We're actually usually in the IRC channel most of the time, but Thursdays are a good day because there's a lot more people in that channel working on Backdrop. The channel is #Backdrop on irc.freenode.net. I think that's right. We also have a Reddit at reddit.com/r/backdrop, and mostly we spend most time chatting in the issue queue, which is at github.com/backdrop/backdrop-issues. And that's where we usually spend a bunch of time working on Thursdays together on various different things that come up with Backdrop. And so if you want to be involved in those conversations or watch the conversations or whatever, you definitely can do that in any of those locations. Soon we'll also use Backdrop CMS.org, our website, as a place where we can collaborate, but we don't quite have that working yet. We have a set of upcoming events, if you're interested in following along with those, on an iCal feed that you can find on the Backdrop CMS.org contribute page. It's also linked in our weekly meeting agenda. And that'll list upcoming Drupal events that are Backdrop friendly. Let's see. We also have an iCal feed for this weekly meeting. We also have a design meeting that happens once every 2 weeks, and we'll have project management committee meetings as needed. And there's iCal feeds for those meetings as well. Upcoming events, the Backdrop Summit is, or actually the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit is first. That will be October 10th through 11th I think it's in Seattle this year. And then Backdrop Summit at Bad Camp is October 22nd, which is Thursday. That's 3 weeks away. Drupal Camp Ohio is that same weekend, so if you're on the other side of the country and would rather go to Ohio than California, that's a good option. And then we have Drupal Camp Utah in February, and Sand Camp, which is in San Diego, is also the same weekend in February. I'm just reading the chat here. Andy asked if there's any official update on layouts, field blocks, blocks as content, random issues. I don't think there's any official updates. I think we'll keep working in the issue queue and try and figure that out.
Yeah, there's no official updates, but there's some kind of exciting stuff happening. Let's see. The layouts follow-up issue is 345. And there's a bunch of sub-items under there. And there's a working pull request for a couple of those, one of which is pretty exciting, the ability to have just a custom text block and just plop it right into a layout without needing to make a custom block. So it would literally be a configuration saved just string of text, which is pretty exciting. I think Panels has had something like that for a long time. That it's just text and a text format, and that way you don't need to go off and make a separate block someplace else, and it's exportable. So that's pretty handy. And field blocks as well. There's working pull requests for that also that would allow you to place a individual field off of a node or other type of fieldable content separate from the node content. So you can place the node content in the middle, and then you can place, like, I don't know, profile picture in the right-hand sidebar, and I don't know, a date field in the right-hand sidebar, or wherever else in the layout you wanted. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, we've had the ability to have like node-specific or context-specific blocks for a long time, but we don't have any actual uses of them. So getting those things into core is going to be really exciting. There's actually already a contrib module that does that. That lets you place fields wherever you want, but getting it into core is going to be really exciting, and that definitely is going to happen for 1.3. Let's see, random ideas about layouts. No other real random ideas. You can check out that issue though. There's a number of issues in there in the layout follow-up issue 345 that don't have pull requests or even issues yet. So if you're kind of interested in taking a walk in the land of layouts, that's a great place to get started and make a sub issue and get in tackling one of those.
All right. Well, are there any other questions or comments or anything we should talk about this week?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's pretty exciting. Like I like this little lull here. You know, after 1.2, 1.2 is such a monster release with date and link and email and CK editor that it's nice having this little, you know, like let's take a deep breath and do a little bit of polishing. So I'm even though 1.3 might not have major features, although although as we get closer to release, like we'll see how exactly how not major the features are. I think some of the things like that are in stock are going to be really exciting. Yeah, just I mean maybe it's not new, but it's going to be better, and that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
There's also really fascinating. I mean, not to. Okay, this is tooting my own horn. So there's an issue or a couple of issues about performance. There's a background like background processing issue, which allows us to do things like if the automated cron is run, we deliver the page back to the user, and then we close the connection so that the background cron can run without holding up the page request, which is really exciting. And then once we figured out that was possible, we expanded that to make it so that
so work on cache clear?
What's that?
Does it do the same thing on cache clear?
No, it doesn't do it on cache clear, because cache clear you actually need the cache to be cleared by the next page load, right? Like if you're looking at a page and you clear the cache, you actually want it all to be cleared by the time you deliver that to the user. But it's nice that you can put cron in the background, but you can also do background fetch of anonymous pages, making it so that it would eliminate the first time slow page problem. If your website is low traffic and you only get one hit per day or something like that, then Backdrop could use the previously cached version from yesterday while it generates a new cached version for the next user, which would eliminate the slow first-time problem for not frequently visited sites, and it would also make it so that it would eliminate the one random user every 5 minutes gets a slow page load problem, because everybody would get a fast page load. It's just that one user would get a just slightly stale copy of the page, and then in the background that request would generate the new page for future anonymous users. So basically assuming you got hit constantly, every 5 minutes and 1 second, somebody would generate a new cache entry, but they would get served a cache page that was 5 minutes and 1 second old, even though 5 minutes was your cache lifetime. So they'd get just a very, very slightly stale copy, but nobody would get a slow page load, which is really awesome.
And then you also made it faster for searching for files too, right? The file scan directory.
Yeah, that stuff's in 1.2 actually. There's a bunch of performance stuff that's in 1.2 that things like if you have a node modules directory in your theme directory, then it doesn't scan that for template files, because that's where like Node.js keeps all of its stuff, and we don't need to be traversing in there. When we file scan the entire site structure, we skip a whole bunch of stuff now. Like we skip CSS directories and JS directories and libraries and directories that clearly aren't going to contain another module. So our scanning of .info files is faster.
Yay.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff doesn't need to wait. The background fetch thing is going to wait because it actually adds a new feature. It actually adds a checkbox to the performance page that says, turn it on or off. And we'd probably turn it on by default out of the box, but we probably wouldn't turn it on, as is our policy on existing sites. So if you upgrade, we don't want to be changing settings out from underneath existing sites that could cause some change in behavior, even if it's a positive change in behavior.
Okay. Good stuff on the horizon. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, then let's break for today. We can chat in IRC if more stuff comes up, and we will talk to you next week in
Okay.
this meeting.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Hey, everyone.